Still coffee on your
Allison, you grabbed sweets. I'm shocked.
I brought them from BC Ferry.
Oh.
They had a workshop last night and there was all this stuff left over and she said, take it up to municipal
Oh, so you're
hall.
bringing us stale treats.
If you read your email, you would have known.
I haven't read my
Allison, you're sending those emails at midnight. Not all of us are up.
Well, I thought you checked them on the ferry on the way over.
Well, sometimes I do, but I wrote the ferry with Craig this morning.
No, I'm not gonna call you an office, this is a rental, and I need to work on it next year.
Be a little bit more room there.
So I took it up, and this, Mark is absolutely fantastic. The drywall owner's had his brother working as a sub, and finish his job.
Yeah, the bigger pieces.
I promised the staff that it would end up in,
Oh, you know,
after everybody had a chance.
they'll make it.
That's good.
Do you want me to drive from here?
Oh, sure. They're okay once you break them open.
It is town hall.
No, you're good.
I know, especially after the trainer killed me yesterday in my first session, I was like, I'm walking home and I should have died for having ran in the sun.
Let's make it
I
pound.
was like, I want to see you on quick there. She
One
doesn't
of them,
run,
so it takes a little bit
because she's in
longer.
exercising. But when she went to the sun run, she's like, do you want to come with us? She was going with her girlfriends. I go, no, I dropped her off and I went to the seawall and went in West Vancouver instead.
So was she moving slowly on Monday?
She was actually on Sunday night. She was like in pain because she ran the whole thing.
I'm getting impatient thinking about, oh, good for her.
Good morning, everybody.
That's probably
Has everybody got their breakfast, courtesy of Allison?
No, courtesy
Raj?
of Gary.
No, come on, get in there.
Raj is virtuous.
I don't know about that. This doesn't like breakfast, this doesn't like breakfast. We're gonna call the meeting to order. We're gonna call the meeting to order. Steph, did you get any kind of response from?
I've
Melanie?
asked Janet to call her and
Okay,
send me
thank
a
you.
quick email.
Okay, we will start
No email.
without her, unfortunately. I don't know what the status is. So the approval of the agenda.
I've got no answer, sorry.
Okay, no answer, means she's on her way.
It's good, man.
Approval of the agenda, does anybody have anything they want to add? Or have comments on anything like that?
The staff, you've got the email attended?
It's in my computer.
We've already approved the minutes of the November 1st, agenda item 2.1. And
Okay, just
agenda
stand by here for a second.
2.1 and 2.2.
Stand by. Stand by. Not quite there yet. There's one thing I did
Well,
want
I'm
to put
gonna
up.
remove them from the agenda because it's,
Oh, I see.
Done it.
Yeah, good.
so we should
Sorry.
remove 2.1 and 2.2.
Yeah.
Because that was done at the March 28th meeting. And, just a minute. Why isn't this? I can't, I'm going to get me on there.
Please don't.
Well, I sent it, there it is. I'm not sure, okay, when we get to that, I'd like to raise that one. Okay, I'm good.
Yeah, sorry, Allison, I didn't mean to, I thought you'd do that at
No,
the
I'm-
adoption of the minutes there.
I'm
Like
trying
cancel
to
it.
find my notes I have made.
Adding something to the agenda.
No.
I would like to, just for clarity, add to the agenda an overview of the Gate 3 draft slide presentation.
Bringing this,
I don't know if that's in an open or closed committee, but it's
Sorry to say that now. I was chewing this really hard thing and couldn't hear you.
a review of the draft Gate 3 slide presentation, the Gate 3 presentation. that's
Presentation.
not-
Oh, you mean the presentation?
For the
moved to
council.
Yep.
I would suggest in the close, just because
Yeah.
it's a bit of strategizing for the
Yeah.
council meeting on
And the
this.
financials are totally draft incomplete, so it's
Okay.
not going to be information.
In 5.5, I don't know whether that should be in closed or in the open, because we can't talk about numbers or anybody without the, being enclosed.
I know,
5.5 fundraising cabinet coordinator selection.
Yeah.
the actual selection, we certainly can do, we can have a
It's just more of an
discussion
up-
if that's.
it's more of an
what-
Well, as long as you're not planning
An
on
update,
presenting
okay.
any
Update's
numbers
good.
or any information
Yeah.
about the two proposals. Otherwise, it's got to be.
Well, if we're not talking about identifiable information about an individual, if we're not talking,
Proprietary information about numbers.
It appears in closed again.
Well, it's
as-
a general discussion about budget,
Yeah, general
Okay,
discussion.
as long as, it's okay, that's fine.
and it's more of an update.
And then Jackie sent
From
an
what
email
came out of
around,
Monday's
are you
meeting.
wanting to add that, Jackie? The document you sent around on an email, is that going on the closed?
Shauna, are you asking Shauna?
Shauna, sorry,
That's okay.
that's on the closed.
okay.
I
Yeah.
understand that's going to the close.
I'm gonna put that on the close, yeah.
For open, we're just removing 2 items.
Okay, so Sam, you wanna put something in new business?
Wasn't it?
It's gonna be in the closed meeting. 'cause
Oh, it's gonna go to the close,
It's
okay.
just the draft presentation, and that we should all review it before it goes to the council.
Yeah. So in new business, I just wanted to have a very quick update. I had a chat with Ann Silver about that operation, and I just want to have a quick update. So what I'd like to do is, that'll be 6.1,
Okay,
and we'll move the closed meeting to 6.2,
okay.
okay?
So it's update regarding the children's center?
Update, yeah, whatever, on a conversation with Ann Silver. Well, it's on the side.
Okay.
ECC. Okay. Adoption of the minutes as amended.
No, the agenda is amended.
I'm sorry, the agenda, yeah. The agenda,
So moved.
thank you. Second.
Come on, you can check it.
All in favor? Yeah. Oh, good, thank you. All right, so the adoption of the minutes, 2.1 and 2.2 have been pulled. So has anybody had a chance to look through the minutes? Does anybody need some time? Does somebody want to move the
I'll
adoption?
move adoption.
Kathy's in there. Allison too? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. All right, so public comments. Paul, welcome.
Thank you.
Paul Newsom.
I don't know a couple of you, I'm Paul, I've been in this.
Yourself to a seat, how long, I don't know how long you're gonna be?
I'm 5 minutes.
Sure,
5
fine.
minutes, so that's the public comments, it's 5 minutes. So you're doing great work, I appreciate that. I wouldn't be here if I felt there wasn't something going off the rails, which is why I'm here. The things that I'm going to deal with, that I'm going to comment on, and hopefully find some resolution today, are the tech booth in the design, the equipment list, and the memorandum of agreement with the municipality. When we left, the last time I spoke to you people, I thought we made it really clear. We made it clear from the very beginning that this building, this room, the large multi-purpose space, needs to have technical capabilities to do theater properly. It needs to be modest, yes, but it needs to have the elements, and the tech booth is one of the elements. I got a document a few weeks ago. I don't know whether it was a request for proposal or whatever it was, but one of the primary things that was stated right at the beginning of that was that there would not be a tech booth, that the technician would be sitting in the audience, which is an absolute, it's just a showstopper for me and for the arts community, the theater community. So my comment, I mean, we were asked to comment on this, and my comment was, this is a showstopper. What didn't you understand about needing a technical booth? And Sherry Elrick, I think, put it most succinctly. She said either this committee did not understand the importance of that, or they can't figure out a solution to that. Now, there's always a solution in theater. You don't need more square footage, we just need a creative solution for this. Theater deals not just in sound, it deals in silence, and it deals in lack of light. So when you have a technician that's sitting there on a headset with a cue sheet in front of them saying, we've got to wait, that quick change, that actor getting out of one costume is not quite ready yet, wait on cue 23, okay, go to cue 23. You have somebody sitting in the audience in absolutely dead silent space with a cue sheet, a light in front of them, speaking on a headset. It's a no-brainer. You cannot do that in theater, so you've already failed if you can't understand that. So you have to understand that theater deals in silence, and it deals in the ability to black out.
Yep.
Okay, so why isn't there a solution here? I don't know if you haven't figured out
Can
a
I just ask
solution.
a question?
Well, I would actually prefer if you leave the questions till later, just write them down, because I only have 5 minutes here. Thank you.
No worries, Paul.
Yeah, so that's my first concern, is it's gone off
Yeah.
the rails with the technical thing. That has to be solved. Otherwise, you will not get buy-in from the arts community.
Okay.
Just as a sideline, I got a list of equipment yesterday, was asked to comment on it by Jacqueline. I look at that list and I go, I don't know, is this what this theater needs? I actually went to Presentation House and got them to submit to you guys exactly what a small theater that size optimally will need, and I stated that, you know, that this is a blue sky thing, we don't need all this stuff, but this is what a normal theater would have, a small pocket theater. Now, you don't have the expertise. If I'm being asked to vet this list of stuff, you need to, I've said 3 times now, you need to ask an expert. You're talking about a $12 million building and a space that has to last for generations and be effective. You shouldn't be asking me, you should be going to a theater person to say, is this adequate? And how much will this cost and where do I source this stuff, okay?
Absolutely.
The other thing that I find really disturbing about this is that list is every single item on the multi-purpose is highlighted in yellow. At the bottom it says, this is a nice to have list. And in your email to everybody, I believe, I don't know who sent the email from Burns, but it says all need to haves will be purged. So what am I to think? You've got every single thing in that mall, every single technical piece of equipment is nice to have, and it's now been theoretically purged. There is no other constituency on that, what, a 300-400 item list that's been purged to that extent. I don't see, with apologies, I don't see recreation being purged 100%. So that's a question I have, and I hope to have that answered. The third thing is the memorandum of agreement.
Yeah.
This thing was all started by the theater community not being able to program. We have to get out of the gym at night because there's something happening the next morning. We have to get out of the Legion for the same reason. The church, we have to get out of the church. So we have to strike. And Tiernaug, every single night you go to a show at Tiernaug that's not produced by Tiernaug, they have to tear down that set, take it out and put it in the truck and then bring it back the next morning. We're sick of this. We're the last major constituency in this community that has not been served, with the exception of a pool and an ice rink.
Yeah.
It's time, it's right. And remember, you have to trust that we are a sharing community. The arts is a sharing community. We're responsible. We're not going to bump somebody if it's important, but we need to have control over this space. We need to have priority over this space. We're happy to share this space. We're responsible. Right from the word go, this has been an enormous question. You can't put out a case of support that does not address that problem. And that problem will not be supported, and that solution will not be supported unless we do have control, unless the arts does have control over that. So that's all I have to say, is that it's time to move on that. And if staff recommends that this memorandum of agreement is palatable and it will serve this community, why isn't it going forward? I don't understand. It's a deal breaker. You can't do a case of support. You can't go forward without solving these 2 problems. Thank you.
Absolutely, Paul, and thank you very much. And those are all very valid points. And I don't know if Craig, if you or Drew want to sort
I
of
think
respond to any of them, or
Do
Sam?
you want
Quite hard of hearing, so I'm just...
Okay, no problem.
Do you want any feedback right now on any of those points?
It's your committee. I'm just saying that from my point of view, and I'm a fairly key person in building support for this initiative.
Absolutely.
So you've heard what my opinion is.
Yeah.
But, I would like to see a solution to that technical thing.
So
I think it's not beyond reach.
So we heard 3 items, not 2, right? We heard the
3.
issue about the technical booth,
Yeah.
which is an individual item, and then the second one was about the equipment list and comments on the equipment list.
And hiring a professional was included in that.
Yeah. When you're talking 12 million, why not spend 20 or 30?
Let's focus just on the
to actually
bigger picture of.
price it out.
That was part of his point.
And then the third was the MOU
That's correct. Yeah.
and getting that resolved.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go backwards. So the MOU is here today to move forward,
Okay.
right? So the team is working towards moving that forward daily. We even met 2 days ago and completed more work on that. So although there's a concern, I think the work is in progress and there is motivation on everyone to see this occur successfully so that this project moves forward. Great. The issue number 2 about the equipment.
And can I just jump in? Yes, I forwarded that request that you had sent to Sam to Paul because of aware that Paul had much more technical expertise than I did, and I felt like I needed to call in somebody else with somebody who had more knowledge around those things, so.
And Paul, I think what I want to assure you is you're not the only person we're asking any questions of. You're not the sole person. So to feel like, you know, coming to you for some support is an error, apologies, but we want everyone to be engaged on this. We have experts lined up. We've also met, and it kind of ties into the tech booth comments. We've already engaged other experts with Sherry and gone to the community roundhouse to talk about both equipment and tech booth.
Sherry's view is different because she's a musician. They don't deal in silence very much. So
Understand.
I appreciate that you've asked me, and it's great. And I assume you're asking other people.
Yeah.
And you need to ask people that this is their business.
And when you see comments on a project document like purge or whatnot, it's because we're trying to manage various details within project budgets in and out of scope items. It doesn't mean that they won't all happen within the community's view of what the project delivers, but in terms of how we manage different deliverables within the project has to be managed with different details. So it might be purged from one equipment list and go to another, just as you may see on the next equipment list if you're involved. There's no fridges or there's no computers because those are going to be separate equipment lists. So be assured that there is a process in play here, and if you're being asked to support,
Well, I
it's
just
not
don't want the
because
process to go too far beyond that, because it's not clear in that letter, and I don't think it was particularly clear to Jacqueline that that was the case. And you know, the perceptions are important, and you need to manage perceptions throughout the whole process. And if there's something like this slips through the cracks for me, then it's a cautionary tale for you as to how you present your case for support and how you so forth. Like, this is an opportunity in terms of the tech. I mean, you go to Evergreen, they have the box office name, they have the lighting board name. It's not a barrier. This tech booth, it's actually a challenge. You fundraise specifically for that. We could even commit as the Arts Council, I would hope, to okay, we will specifically fundraise for a tech booth and for the equipment in the tech booth. You get your name on that. So instead of it being, oh, we need more, you don't need more square footage. You don't need all that stuff. Take out 8 seats if you have to. You know, it's because it must function that way. And so, anyway, I appreciate that you guys are all, you know, that there's multifacets to this that I'm not aware of. I'm completely fine with that. I'm just saying that I need this to be heard right now before it goes to the point where you spend a lot of money and then I go, this isn't working for us.
No.
exactly.
Ultimately, Paul, it will work for you.
Well,
We're not going forward unless it works for you.
Okay.
You know, trust us here.
Again,
It's gonna take a while,
I've stayed
but
our needs many times, and
I know.
it's still being debated whether this is, you know, even just the term of nice to have. This isn't nice to have. This is important to have.
Absolutely.
Just that the vernacular you're using is already starting to worry me. So you know, this is the time to get those worries on the table, not when you've printed off your case of support and you're out fundraising.
We're considering you when we're engaging you as part of a project team, and there's going to be change, right? It's going to need discussion. Not everything's finalized when you're part of the team. You're making things happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you guys want to comment at all on the tech booth, or do we want to save that for another time?
We can save it for another time, but I think the comments are really valid, and I don't think there's been as much detailed design in terms of the technical capabilities of that room to date. And so I would sort of offer that as reassurance that yes, the next phase of design, we're actually proposing to engage more consultation for the technical parts of it. Up until now, it's been whole building design, scope of work. We're adding backup generators and stuff like that, and so we're not drilling into the detail.
The fine tuning.
You do have your functional program, you know, and your functional program should include a tech booth, and at this point, it doesn't really appear that it's solidly in there.
Yeah,
What we
and
have,
You're past the
what we
functional
have
program
done, Paul,
stage, right?
Yeah.
what we have done is Sam, Craig and I went with Sherry to the Roundhouse Theatre and met with the techs there. We were introduced to their theater, how it works, the shortfalls and the good stuff,
Yeah.
to the retractable seating,
Yeah.
and the challenges that that brings with it in terms of exiting for the audience, how we have to have exiting around the top of that.
Yeah.
So it starts to eat into the space allocations. What we have in this preliminary design, as Craig has noted, there is area allocated for those technical functions. It's not a built-in booth yet, because that's me, as Craig says, we haven't drilled down to that place, but there are, the two upper corners have been dedicated at this point to technical functions, to sound and light. And as we move forward, we'll look more deeply into that. There are pros and cons, we've heard pros and cons around the whole question of whether there needs to be a fully enclosed booth or not. We hear that from you that there needs to be. So that's, and we're hearing, and we've heard from others the absolute opposite, that there's no need for an enclosed booth.
You're hearing those from musicians, not theater people.
Well, we heard,
So the
that's-
input's helpful,
Yeah.
the input's helpful.
Yeah,
and we met with Andrew,
and
the technical manager for the whole space. We didn't meet with users or providers.
Yep.
Sherry guided us because she was an introduction, but we actually met with the technical production people, which there was 3 or 4 of that helped.
So my go-to person is Presentation House Theatre, because it's very similar size, it's a very modest theatre, it's a very cheap theatre. They're actually now, they're about to head out on tour, and they're helping me with that list that I was sent. They've been very, very kind to us. If you ever get a chance, I could even set it up, go and talk to those people, because they're doing basic theatre, not expensive, and, you know, it's, you know, I mean, you know, even if you sequester that somehow, you just gotta sequester it from, I mean, it could be fabric, it could be all sorts of things, you know, fireproof, it just needs to be visually and auditorially sequestered. So anyway,
And Paul,
yeah,
is
this
that
takes up
Kim?
too much of your
Is that
time
Kim
here.
Selady?
You know
All
what
right,
my
we
goals
appreciate
are.
it, Paul.
And I see
Really
that you're
appreciate the
working
feedback.
towards
Thank
that,
you.
which is all I want to do, is say, keep working towards that.
Yeah.
Because there's always going to, there is a solution to this, whether it's an exterior, you know, whether it's a cantilever suspended booth above the retractable seam that you access with a covered outdoor stairway at the back. I mean, there's all sorts of
Yeah.
ways of solving this that do not increase your square footage and reduce your audience capacity very much if you throw 8 seats along the front row. If you
But
have
Paul,
to take
can I
them out the
ask
back.
you, I left the room because I found you to be very disrespectful in the
I'm
way,
sorry?
I found you to be very disrespectful in the way you were talking to the group. I'm out there dealing with a dead 22-year-old and the
Yes, I
trauma for
understand.
firefighters. And to hear you get so angry in this
But I'm
meeting.
not angry.
But
I'm
that's
just,
how you
I'm
come
just
across.
passionate. I'm sorry, I apologize. Did people feel I was disrespectful?
Overly passionate.
Well, I'm sorry, I apologize then if that's the case. I'm not mad, I'm frustrated. You know, and I appreciate that. I shouldn't bring that frustration to this meeting, but it's years and years and years that I've been talking about this.
I know.
You know, so
I understand.
that's why I started by thanking you, because I appreciate all the work you're doing. And I look around and I see people nodding, saying this is valuable input.
I think, Paul, I think that's true. I think when you use terms like, you won't get any buy-in from the arts community, that feels threatening,
Yes,
Oh, okay.
yes.
right? Or when you say things like, we want control, that feels threatening. So
Well,
it's like, it doesn't feel like a collaborative process.
Right, okay, I'm sorry for that.
At the
No, I
same
don't
time,
mean it that way.
at the same time, the input is actually valuable.
Right.
Absolutely.
You bring a certain expertise to this group, and so from my point of view at least, I find input valuable, so.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I really, you know, we've been through this before, and I have been disrespectful before, and so, you know, I'm really, I know what's going on this island this morning. And it touches my heart, so I apologize.
No worries.
It's been so long.
No worries, I know.
The team's goal, ultimately, all of us, you included, is get this building built. Fitting it up with a tech booth or a couple lights that can be added or improved upon. If you don't get the base infrastructure built, because you or the arts community doesn't support it, you will never have a space.
Yeah, I know.
That's the base blind case
But
here.
the base
Let's
is,
build the
it
shell.
can't be a space this big if you need a space this big. So all I'm saying is that little booth there is a core need.
And we have area for it,
Yeah,
that's,
it is-
yeah,
it
that's,
is
so
core
that's
need.
not an
Yeah.
issue.
You know, whether you can put anything in that room, as long as you build it so it can be put in later. And if you don't design around that need, then it's much more difficult to retrofit it.
Absolutely. Understood.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul.
Sounds like we're all gonna have to go and do theater performances in all the other small theaters in the Lower Mainland to see what happens.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to stay, I think I've said.
No, that's
I
fine.
really appreciate, I think you guys
Yeah.
need to just have your discussions on your own and
Right.
don't have to deal with in-camera issues and so on. And so thank you for listening.
Can I ask one question on
Sure,
the
go ahead.
third point? You talked about having to take down and whatever, and I certainly totally understand that. But I guess part of the reason I understood we were doing retractable seating was that we could use the space during the day for programs
Yep.
while theater performances were going on in the evening. So is there something, do we need to think about a solid type of curtain and block so people can't get at the set while it's set up?
Well, your main curtain does that.
Okay,
Yeah.
so
You're
so
already-
you're
the
not
main curtain does
suggesting that if a performance
No,
was
no, no.
going on
No.
Tuesday to Saturday, that
No,
we
no.
couldn't have use of the retractable
No,
seating
you have
space
3/4
area?
of the space
Yeah.
is completely open for you. That's what the main curtain's for.
Yeah,
Just pull the
absolutely.
main curtain across and it's a done deal.
Yep.
At least that's what our approach has always been. Okay, thank you so much. Sorry.
Thank you, Paul.
Good, I'm sorry. And thank you for mentioning it.
Okay, so the action items, Sam, you want to?
Actually, do I have an action item for Jacqueline to reach out to Presentation House? Is that a true story? Is that an action item?
I think the tech,
I
Or
I
you
would
guys?
leave that up to the.
I think we'll do it
design
together.
team,
Yep,
for
we can-
sure.
we can do
Say
that.
design team?
Well, the design team will need a point of contact, and that should come from Jackie to
No.
Sorry.
Sorry, Jackie.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
all right.
While they're working on that, Sam, do you want to start off and we'll come back to that?
Where are we doing action items?
Yeah, action items. yeah.
There is action items as you go through the document on the last page, page 18 of 18. This is,
That's the one. I think we did. Oh, the very last page, why don't I just put the one on the last
Summarize.
Beautifully summarized.
Traffic management plan into the DD report. I don't know if we've actually got there yet, have we? So
In progress.
Ongoing.
Whose action is that?
That,
Design.
It says design team.
page? Says design. You don't know what to do with it, it goes to
Look at traffic
design
at the
team.
moment, right?
I think at our last meeting, what we were talking about was that intersection, and Kriya's looking at the intersection.
Korea's looking at it?
Prius is not, they're not traffic consultants, they're civil
Yeah.
engineers. So
I'm-
we'd need somebody like
Okay.
Lee or somebody like that.
So, yeah, there was a traffic management study done recently for a broader context for the island, is that right?
There's an integrated
Integrated
transportation
transportation
plan.
Yeah.
And then I thought it was actually in your report, Sam, to look into a
traffic
more
consultant.
specific understanding of just that intersection
Yeah.
of the driveway.
Okay, so ongoing.
Yes,
We'll
well,
assign that to myself and Bowen.
Did you get the,
So I'm taking the design team off and putting Sam Collins on.
Yeah, and Bowen.
And
Ben.
Okay.
Yeah.
what's Bowen? That's a
Ben.
It's an island.
now? Okay. That means her.
Can I ask you a question? With the traffic consultant, what will their deliverables be?
And an investigation of the intersection where the
Access and egress to the site.
driveway hits Bowen Island Truck Road.
So typically
Give a
what they do
design
is
or
they,
suggestions or?
Exactly.
Yes.
Okay.
Typically what they do is they try to understand what the traffic patterns and flow is around that intersection now, and then what the impact of the building will be in terms of making that busier or more dangerous or whatever,
Right.
and suggest ways that design could help manage that flow in a better way.
Whether it's for instance, a right in, right out only.
And not just for cars, but for buses and bikes and pedestrians.
Trucks and whatever.
And it's,
Okay.
Did you get the
The-
traffic
I-
there?
The other,
No.
just related to that, there would need to be some consideration given to future development. We're operating
You've
under,
got volume.
we're operating under the assumption that that's effectively a driveway for the community center now. If
That
were
is
to-
the assumption.
If that were to become an access point to the greater parcel of land, then that would totally change what the traffic consultant would come back with as recommendations.
And I think what we talked about at the meeting was that we would limit the scope of what we're doing now to what we're doing now in terms of the community center.
Yeah, you've
If-
answered my question, I just
Yeah.
needed to know what the deliverables were.
Well, it's just, if you're talking about expanding it, I think what we talked about last time was that we wouldn't expand it to.
the project
include-
scope would remain at the property line and driveway.
Right.
And we wouldn't get into
We're
adding
doing,
a street traffic light or whatever
And that's,
signage, that would be a separate.
Yeah.
that's kind of a base assumption
But it would
for
be the
anything.
design for the intersection.
as if
If
it was
it
a
goes that
driveway
far.
access to the community
If
center.
if
Yeah.
it needs a design, yes.
So the action is,
The action is not the same because the traffic management plan does not need to be included in a final DD report, because that could be a separate project or an ongoing sequential activity that the Bowen Island municipality is reviewing as a part of this development. It doesn't necessarily have to occur in the DD report.
No, but it will impact the civil work ultimately.
Yeah.
Yeah, like if it affects the design of that intersection, then we want it to occur immediately in the next phase of work. Like, it'll be an additional piece of work that needs to be done as part of the project, right?
It may not. I would say right now the boundaries of the scope of the project do not include an intersection upgrade, and a study needs to be undertaken with consideration of the addition of the community center in this location and the traffic it proposes. But upgrades to that intersection have not yet been approved to be included into the boundaries of the scope of this project.
Okay,
So
we would expect that
it
the
it
municipality
could
would want us to do
impact
that.
civil if Bowen Island wants to include upgrading that intersection as part of the project. But they may not, that's something
Can
we
we
have
change
to
the
It's
word
not
plan
currently
to
an
review?
intersection.
Because we're getting a lot of comments from the public about how you're gonna get in and out. So we just need to be able to answer the
Yeah.
questions about how is our driveway going to be accessed and impact.
I would expect that when we submit this as a project to the municipality, that there will be an off-site requirement in terms of.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
And that off-site requirement would require a traffic study and upgrades
Yeah.
to make it an intersection, because it currently isn't.
Exactly.
And so I would actually say that this is part of the project, in terms of its study
But if
and.
it's a driveway, Craig, it's not an intersection. An
Well, the
intersection's a
No,
it
road.
needs to
driveway will be
interface
road,
with the
it will
road.
create an intersection, and vehicle access to the project should be included in the scope of the project. I'm sounding.
Like, I'm only just, typically, when we would submit something to a city,
Yeah.
they would say, what is the impact on our city infrastructure?
Absolutely.
And the question from engineering will be, what is the solution to make this an intersection now that there's a driveway here? And so it would be on the design team to solve that problem for the municipality and build a sidewalk or an apron or a divider or street signage. Like, that's typically called off-site, and it's included in the project as a way of addressing municipal needs where the project interfaces with the city infrastructure.
Yeah, there's no question
I
that
will
there's
agree
gonna
and
have to
disagree.
be.
I mean, it does happen from time to time. It doesn't need to happen. What we need right now is a driveway that interfaces with Bowen Island Trunk Road, and Bowen Island needs to undertake a study to determine what impacts to offsite there is before it's included into the project, if there's no change.
But if we were Village Square applying for an expansion, we would ask them to do that.
Correct.
As part of their,
Like I
getting
wonder,
their
if-
drive, as part
sorry.
of getting their driveway access permit, which is what we're gonna need.
Which is part of the building permit.
Which
process.
we would ask them to provide all that information.
like, it may even be worth just literally taking this drawing upstairs to engineering and saying, what offsite requirements are there for this project? And confirming whether they need us to design this driveway intersection with Bow and Trump
The,
Road.
the biggest change will be the downhill one and for the left-hand turn. I mean, obviously, you gotta somehow make a left-hand turn in there, we just can't leave it the way it is.
Right.
So that'll be part of the building permit process. You know, where are the lines in the actual project?
Maybe we need a
process.
roundabout.
Well, maybe we do, who knows? Yeah, right in the middle of Fairyland.
Well, I guess the
Continue with
work is
those.
worth doing because it absolutely needs to be solved, whether it's lighting or a pedestrian crosswalk or line painting or a divider or
Late
signage,
lighting.
like, all of that actually needs to be figured out in order for it to work. You can't just plug in a driveway and expect it to work.
No.
Especially at that location where you've got very commercial traffic.
And there's already
Especially
a
when you've got kids
crosswalk.
going to school.
Yeah.
And that needs to be addressed.
Okay, so is it premature to do it now if we're not exactly sure what the volume is, or should we go ahead and do it
No, it needs
based
to,
on the volume of the community?
I just don't
center?
think it needs to happen within the DD report. I
Can
think
we
it
say
can be
consider
triggered by the-
traffic
By the approval
management?
of the DD report.
I think the DD report is kind of out of
Trigger
the
that.
gate. There's not much going to be added to the DD report beyond what we've already done.
Or maybe this should be part of it.
But this should be included as some kind of next piece of work. for-
Exactly.
In the
Well, it
next
says
phase.
final.
Well,
It
that's what I'm
doesn't
saying.
mean gate 3 DD report, it says final. That to me
Final
could be
DD
the
report
last
is
one.
gate 3.
Oh, there's no more design reports?
I think
being
this
done?
This is design development.
Yeah, the sooner we can get Bob to look at this, our public works manager, the
Yeah.
better. I mean, just, he's.
Agreed.
He's
So why don't we
not an
just have an
engineer, but
action
he's
item to get it?
practical, right?
Let's have
You
an
know,
action
like,
item to
let's
get
know.
it to him
Yeah,
with some criteria.
just even for a quick look at it, just to say, here's my issues with it, here's.
Yeah.
Who's giving
That's a
what?
start. And if he
I-
wants,
I
if he
well, I
wants a
can
traffic,
coordinate it.
and then if he wants a traffic survey, or a traffic management plan, or an intersection plan, whatever it is,
Yeah.
if he wants.
I
that,
just
then-
like his input, you know, just because he,
Yeah, I think that's a
Ultimately
nice
practical.
way to do it.
Discuss traffic management with Public Works.
Mhm.
Kathy
Perfect.
and Drew, because Drew's on island.
Could we maybe add, could we add a bit of,
Hey, me and
could
Bob.
we add some
we're gonna go
consultation
up
with
there, we're gonna solve
programming as well for that? Because we'll have a good idea of how many people are
Absolutely.
coming in and out of the building
Yeah.
at various times. And I think that's probably important, especially at the 8:30 in the morning.
Sure. I just at this stage just really want Bob just to kind of look at,
Overview.
from a really high level,
High
just
level.
say, okay, is this practical or not? But maybe Steffi could ask Janet just to arrange a meeting with Sean and myself and Drew and Bob. and just
Yeah, and I
take a
think
quick-
you're right though, that what the traffic person will do when they study it is look at patterns of use in the building and existing patterns and discover where they conflict with each other and propose ways of
Okay.
managing it, so. I think
And I'll
it's
just be there to
important.
manage Bob.
Is this then going to eclipse the traffic study action item? We'll just leave that to be triggered.
I think.
No, I think there's two pieces of
There are
action
There's
here.
there's a bunch of
One's
ones
an
there, if you want me
immediate-
to redraft that.
immediate
action,
conversation,
I'll
one
redraft
is-
Well, this is just a
all-
sidebar. I
yeah.
think we'll just
Okay.
have a conversation with Bob and it's you know,
Yeah.
it's not a
So
big
we've-
deal.
I've still got Sam and staff exploring traffic management.
Sure.
Yeah, I can leave that that way. Okay. We've
Uh,
beaten
no,
that
he's
to
got a
death. Now,
question.
where was this, sorry,
I'm just going to ask the steering committee's indulgence on this one. I just want to add a sidebar, and it really is a sidebar. The reason why I asked about what the deliverables would be on the traffic management thing was we've just submitted an application to the Smart Cities Challenge, and it dealt with trying to incorporate smart cities, smart technology into traffic demand management. And Steph just forwarded me an email the other day. The BC government is about to, the province is about to open up another challenge similar, and I was wondering perhaps maybe Raj and I could they're asking communities now to approach the province on projects. I'm wondering if maybe we could develop something around the community center, because in there'll be lots of different smart technologies we could incorporate. It's just another possible funding stream, so just as an action item, perhaps if we could just explore that conversation.
I have such a long to-do list for Raj when he's finished with the budget.
That
I'm holding it down with a number
Could
one.
I send an email with Raj CC? It was just,
Oh, yeah,
it was just to keep
absolutely.
staff
Yeah.
informed. It was,
Yeah,
it
for
was,
sure,
that
for
was
sure.
more, that was more why I said Raj.
I'm
was-
still being a little protective.
I just wondering if we could maybe explore that as a possible. And I will CC Raj, just because it involves potential.
I'd be curious too.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So this mobile speed measuring camera, are we doing that? What was the?
Well, that was
One-
done.
One,
We just need to give them the
1,
back.
2, and 3 are all this issue that we've just discussed.
Oh, isn't that wonderful?
And
Carry on.
4 falls comes out of that.
And 4 is part of it.
And there is a new
Or
FAQ
is-
for that, it's
yeah.
done, just says that
So,
we'll be studying,
you're done.
we will be studying
It
the
says that we'll be
traffic.
studying it?
Yes.
Well, there you
We
go.
will be reviewing it.
Ah, see? We're ahead of
So the
ourselves.
public knows, we'll be reviewing it, I'm not sure if it's on the website just yet, but it is ready to go.
Item 5, the step code. We did have some discussion about that in the last period, and I think we have some FAQ done on that one.
The
Shona contacted us about
Was
that as
done,
well.
but needs revision.
Yeah. There was I think it was a thought early on that we were going to achieve a certain level of the step code with this building. And what we discovered through energy modeling is we will not achieve that.
Not make the,
So the-
not make it step 3.
Just a bit of context for that, the step code is, as you know, a new measurement tool and a target. And it is primarily designed for specific building types. And so what we did, going through the energy modeling process, is the building that we're designing is actually super energy efficient. And we're meeting one measure of criteria for the step code because it's kind of applicable to our building. There's one other measurement for the step code, like a target, that means that, like, you could never meet that target with the kind of building we have, a single-story, non-residential building. And what it highlights is that the step code is still kind of new and doesn't have specific targets for specific building types. And so I think it's just important to know that we're still pursuing the step code in all of its other measures. For this one target, we won't meet it, but don't feel bad about it, because it just literally is meaningless for our project.
The
So I mean,
the challenge will be getting that message out to the community in the appropriate way, because the issue really, as Craig says, the issue is not with the building. It's a good building, but with this building typology, we can't ever meet the current criteria of the step code. So it's a bit of a catch-22.
And can I
can
add,
say the
maybe not
intent
just building typology, but the uses, right? Because that's gonna drive the space that we've created, which created the building typography, so that's part of
Yeah,
it.
so it's, I think we were gonna have an FAQ about the step code, and we kind of put the brakes on it, only because we want to be able to tell the story in a quick and meaningful way so that people don't get all worried about us not meeting it.
I think hand in hand with that is a question of if and when the municipality will adopt the step code. Many municipalities are stepping back from that because of this very challenge.
Mhm.
The step code is not yet
It was
ready.
just a little bit early days. It's got all the right ingredients in it, but it's early days.
What was interesting in going through the energy modeling was to see how good the building actually is. And interesting, you can see what potential cost savings there would be in electricity and propane with different wall assemblies and roof assemblies and windows, and you know, you can test all of that stuff. So it was a really interesting workshop that we had about it, and we think we've got something that's really optimal. And if we use the step code as the criteria for the goal we're trying to achieve, that's not the way it's going to spin.
I think messaging is key about it, because after our last meeting, I had 2 members of council contact me separately who watched the recordings of the meeting and were so excited that we were aiming for, I think, what was level
Well,
3.
I think we can aim for it, and it can be the intent.
Well, we're actually achieving level 3
Yeah.
based
Okay.
on total energy performance. And that's why we targeted it, because for all the reasons in the world, it's kind of the way things are being measured these days. It's just that this other target, they basically have these 2 numbers And one of them makes sense for a building and one of them doesn't, and
What's the
so
other target, Craig? Sorry, I was busy thinking about something else when you started talking.
there's thermal energy demand, and then there's total energy demand.
Okay.
And so the thermal energy demand we're not meeting, the total energy demand we are. But don't even write that down, because what we want to do is we want to make sure that this message is conveyed
Yeah.
clearly and that people
Yeah.
understand
Yeah.
that here's where we sit, we're actually achieving all the things that the STEPCO's trying to do. And by the way, here's some other things that we're doing, and that should be the message, rather than, oh, we're not meeting this
Yes.
one criteria that doesn't make sense for our building.
No, I understand that, so just to bring it down to simplest terms, what should be the communication message? And we're targeting step 3?
I think we'll just work
communication
on-
message is that we've reviewed the STEP code.
Yes,
We looked at step 3 as an optimal objective,
yes.
and we're meeting the total energy criteria of the step code. Stop there.
Okay.
But
So-
we're not, we're not achieving step 3 because of other criteria.
Yes,
Well,
sir.
then that's the part that you don't say.
Well, exactly,
No, exactly.
exactly, you know, and that's fine.
Shauna?
And then what
Maybe-
other criteria?
Maybe you could, when you craft that, you can send it to us, and
Yes.
we'll run it by our mechanical engineers, and we'll come back with something.
Okay.
So in this process, it's called energy modeling, that we sat down with the consultants and went through a bunch of criteria and helped fine tune the building. There will be a energy modeling report that comes out of that we don't have in our hands yet, but that might also have some language in it that we can use for.
Okay.
Actually, the energy modeler might be the best person to craft that response. As
Well,
opposed
then,
to
Yeah.
that's exactly
Rather than
why
me.
we don't have the report yet. Because they're working on that.
Richard,
Can I
in our workshop, Richard had some very positive things to say about the building, about where we were going, and how this was all working out, so.
And
So we'll just
explaining
put it on
to,
hold for
explaining,
now.
exactly, and explaining to us why we weren't meeting that number and how,
So
why we
How we
weren't.
can.
So,
there's a
number,
Two hands down here.
number 6.
Hold on,
Just a minute, I've got a
just before we
comment
move on,
on number
Melanie and
5.
Also, I've got that as Craig. You're gonna ask the energy modeling person to provide language.
Yeah, we've already
To
asked,
assist
they
with.
just haven't gotten this. to us
Okay.
yet.
Melanie, do you have your hand up before we move on?
I've got mine up too.
Oh, you're still working on number 5?
It's a question for the step code. Do you think as it gets refined, do you think we might be able to retroactively go back?
Absolutely.
Giving that to?
Yeah. It's a good, it's a good building, that's the bottom line. It's just the testing methodology is not,
And by good, I mean
Aligned
high
with us.
performing. It's a high performance building.
Do you think there's an opportunity to give them feedback?
The step code people?
Yeah.
They might be busy. But yeah, exactly, no, absolutely, it doesn't fit our building for sure. I think they've actually already been hearing.
I just want to throw in, and I think it fits best here, in the criteria under the infrastructure plan for the grant funding, British Columbia will ensure that the following climate lens assessments are completed to both parties' satisfaction and submitted to Canada prior to Canada's approval of a project. For all, a greenhouse gas emissions assessment that includes a cost per ton calculation as required by Canada for all projects with total estimated eligible expenditures of $10 million.
Where'd you find that?
That's in the
It's
Yeah,
in the
we need-
agreement,
building
We need to do a
the integrated
GHG
bilateral
calculation
agreement
for
for, yeah.
their promotional material.
We're not asking for 10 million, are we? We're asking for this.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know, this is the question, so when
I
we're
mean-
talking about including or decluding things, and Paul's, you know,
Thanks,
there's
Allison, that's a
yeah.
good note. What we'll
Yeah.
do is actually tell the energy modeling team to actually review the criteria for that grant application,
That's a good idea.
which they probably already
Well, that's-
understand.
Is
Yeah.
this the new one?
Yeah.
This
And
is
we
the
have
bilateral,
criteria?
no, this is the bilateral agreement that they signed on April 2nd. All the details of what the application is, that criteria, but this is, Canada's expecting this. Now, whether BC is going to add other things.
Okay,
there's-
yeah, should we
yeah.
wait, or,
Well, this is a criteria that is in the signed agreement between the two provinces. So unless, it says unless,
It's gonna have to be
unless
qualified.
otherwise required by Canada. So I think at this point, we should assume that we're going to have to do that.
At the very least.
So it's gonna have to be qualified for sure, yeah.
Whether
We can tell them
BC is going to
now,
add more
if
things.
more things come, we can add more things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, Sam, back to you.
You go, did you have something else?
Nope. I'm done.
We did 5. We did 6. Prepare a separate high-level report that summarizes the project, and that was my added agenda item for the closed meeting.
Okay.
So I have a draft to run through. 8, include growth strategies for municipal offices such as satellite offices to the communication strategy. I think this is ongoing as part of the FAQs. Anything, Shauna, there? Just ongoing?
Just ongoing, yeah.
Meet to discuss the financial implications of the BIM offices on receipt of the utilities reports, operational data, and the cost reports, etc. That's still ongoing. We don't have cost report data yet, but Raj and I have connected about operating costs, preliminary operating costs, and some other sort of funding strategies, which are part of the closed meeting draft report as well. 10, have a separate committee meeting related to the project finances.
Who did that?
We did.
It's ongoing.
It's incomplete or ongoing as we move towards this gate 3, where we're getting our DD cost report, which will likely occur early May at this point. A little bit of delay on that. And 11, formulate a web page with information and circulate the draft of the steering committee. I don't think that's been done yet, but I know working with Sophie and was it 2 days ago, we talked about the web page update as part of that communications meeting, so that'll probably go live around the time of gate 3 with FAQs and whatnot. I think our strategy and approach was to get the FAQs all develop a little bit more of our engagement and communication strategy, and then implement all of those items simultaneously on the web page. I think we can have more discussion as we go through the slides, probably. And that's the 11 items on page 18.
That's perfect. Anybody have any other comments on this? Anything to add? Okay, so the business horizon for the minutes, the design development approval, design team. Da-da-da.
Okay. Well, actually, this one, I think the design development visualizations have been moved to the closed meeting where the presentation is of the building. So if we want to...
Is it?
Yeah. It's really, because the report is really from Sam.
Oh, okay. All right. Good.
With input from us.
Okay. The draft case for support review. How's that going, Jackie?
Yeah, so Sean and I have been in contact with Heather Pretty, who's putting this together. We pulled a bunch of components together, including a table of contents. And so she has been working on it. She's had a number of questions, and Sean responded to a number of them yesterday. And we think that we probably should meet with her again, possibly with Sophie, if you're available, because she was requesting information that she didn't feel was complete in all of the material we had given her. So I think we need to sit down and go through that. And we still need to provide her a few pieces of information as well.
Yeah.
And she is working within our budget that we had discussed and has been approved. And something else you want to add on that?
Process for approving that before it goes public?
Process for that, I believe we're bringing that back to the, I don't know if we'll go communications and finance subcommittee first and then back to the steering committee before it goes public. We are also going to be needing to engage somebody to desktop it. So there was discussion around who would do, a couple of people who might be candidates to do that. I think just some of the things that we do need to provide her still is some update in terms of the Beehive, the numbers around the fundraising. to finalize that, as well as the gift table and the donor recognition. So those are probably things that need to be discussed at the subcommittee level and then to the steering committee.
Are naming, is she asking, would naming opportunities go in the case for support?
I think that's a gift table.
Yeah.
I think that, well, we will have certain levels of gifts, so we'll name them champions or. I don't know
Yeah, but
exactly
I'm
what
talking
we'll
about
do, but-
calling it the XYZ.
So, in
Well, the
terms
actual
of that,
museum and all
I
that
think-
kind
I
of
think
stuff.
That'd be a
that
granular.
we have to have that discussion. I think that would be
Yeah.
great once the fundraising cabinet discussion at the same time, how the municipality wants to handle that, whether or not you would consider naming the building
Well, the
after
reason I'm
a
asking
major
is.
donor.
is
And then I
because-
think we need to, in terms of the case for support, probably will be more of a statement that we do have a consideration for these type of benefits for different donation levels, but that they would probably be discussed one-on-one as opposed to be listed in the book.
Oh, yeah, I guess I was curious as to just how specific we were gonna be about donation levels, which I don't think has anything to do with council, but naming opportunities, I think, is something that we're probably gonna have to get
Absolutely.
council buy-in, so maybe we leave it out at this point of the case for support.
I think so, maybe there'd just be a
Yeah.
general comment in reference to that, but if we could talk about that
But we
during
need,
the
yeah,
fundraising
well, I guess
cabinet
I'm raising it
discussion.
from a timing perspective. I know we need to talk about it at the fundraising committee, but I just was thinking from a timing perspective. If we're wanting to put something in the case for support that talks about naming opportunities, but that then we
Leave it
need to
rather
have.
vague in terms of the
Yeah.
benefits for to donors, but, and so in terms of timeline, we are hoping we had an initial deadline the end of April for the first draft, and that would be what would be circulated to the committee, and again, it has to come back.
That's still valid?
Oh,
She's set aside the next 5 days
Oh,
to
good.
work on it.
Awesome, yeah.
So we may try and meet with her early next week. Oh,
Monday is April 30th.
Right, so it would have to be.
So
I'm at a
We're early May.
conference Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday
So
next
we'll
week.
have to work
but
out the
it'll-
schedules,
So it may be a little bit after the
but we're on it, and
April,
we're.
but we
we're
are
trying to move
working
forward as
towards
fast as
it,
we
for
can.
sure.
And thanks for providing, we've got some images that we want to pull in, and including the new floor layout and floor plan, and a number of other things. So we're also maybe putting in some infographics if we can find somebody who has that talent and expertise to
And-
use their skill.
And was it yesterday? I talked to, after the Monday meeting, I talked to Craig about that, so if you can't find someone,
Do you have someone
his team
else?
can help.
We actually, we're doing a lot of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
So the
This is-
infographic about other program spaces that we talked about, or finance, if, I couldn't remember the name of the gentleman in the firm that would be in the phone.
Chris
Re-
Staples.
Rethink, yeah.
Rethink. Okay, I knew, we knew there was a think in there.
Unthink.
Sean.
Well, that's awesome. So you figure by mid-May, everything will be in, pretty much in position.
That's our hope.
That's our target.
Awesome. That's so fantastic. Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for that. Federal and provincial infrastructure grants allocation. Allison.
Well-
Raj.
They, you want me to do this, Rod?
Yes,
They signed on April 2nd an integrated bilateral agreement for the Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program. BC is getting $4 billion over 10 years. And of that $4 billion, 157 million is for the community recreation, arts and cultural facilities section over 10 years. And of that 157 million, 22 million of it is specifically earmarked for Indigenous communities projects. So that leaves 135 million for the rest of us. And
Sorry, Alison, you said that's over 10 years as well?
yeah, it's not big numbers. And the rural community one, recreation complexes are not even in the eligible projects. So we're just looking at community cultural and recreational infrastructure that has to meet the objective of improved access to and/or increased quality of cultural, recreational, and/or community infrastructure for Canadians. including Indigenous peoples and vulnerable populations. So anyhow, that's not a difficult criteria to meet. The 10-year program funding for fiscal 2018-19, which is the fiscal year we're in now for the federal government, April 1st, 2018 to March 31, 2019, is $157,000.
For the whole
So,
country or
just
for the rest of the
And then
And having
it's
said
all
that, maybe
comments
we
here.
This year.
For the fiscal year starting April 1, 2019 to March 31, 2020, it's $6 million.
Oh, I would have preferred the 6 billion.
No, 6 million, yeah. No, when Raj and I first looked at this, we said, oh, this number's way too small.
Is that $6 million
But
total?
6
So
million
For
total.
the next year.
And the
then
2020,
and then
2021 fiscal, it's 23 million.
And then next year is 40 million.
Yeah, so anyhow,
The year after that it's 40 billion, so.
and we haven't been able to, without the final numbers, figure out what
Yeah,
the
that's right.
maximum
That's
amount we
what's
could
gonna go,
apply
yeah.
for would be. The feds will contribute 50%. But
50 or 60?
sorry, 40%. And that's what this number is. This is the federal government's 40%. In addition, there's other federal grant streams, but they have said that all federal funding for the project cannot exceed 50% of the cost of the project. It's very clear that we can't include the municipal government offices in the eligible criteria. They've got 60 days to put their working committee together, and they have until September 30th, the province, to sort of come up with their plans. So I doubt we will hear anything from talking to Brian Bedford about applications for this project until the fall at the earliest.
And then the BC contribution is
Up 33% minimum. Now, I doubt they're gonna come with any more, but who knows?
So what happened to that 60% they just dropped today?
There was never
50 to
60, it was
60 is
50.
what
Change the number.
And the
Well,
50
there's
is
a,
in
there's
there.
a 40, 50, and 60 within the Investment
There
for
is.
Canada.
No,
There's
there's-
multiple
No, the
criteria.
Investing
That's
in
what Pam
Canada
did tell us,
plan
yeah.
is 40%.
Well,
That's all that this plan will they've got, then they've got
But you
another
can-
caveat, that is that the federal government could fund up to 50% through other grant programs, but they're not gonna fund any more than 50%.
so you
For the
could
same
add in
project.
the cultural spaces.
So if
grant
you added
for
in
10%.
10% for cultural spaces, 40%
You
for
can
this.
use it with other coupons up to.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right, you've got it.
And I think that,
So it's 15 and 27.
Our MP has suggested that we might be eligible for the rural funding as well, which would top it up, but we're not.
We're not.
Not based on the criteria.
Just looking at those dates that Alison provided, is it at all realistic to consider that you'd be going to referendum in October?
Well, this is the chicken and egg problem
Yeah.
that we've had all along,
Yeah.
because Pam told us she wanted she wanted to know that we had all our money lined up, so that they wouldn't grant the money and
Yeah.
then have us back out. So that implied to us fairly clearly that we needed to have the referendum before the grant
Yeah,
application.
what she said is proven community support.
Yeah, well, but she talked about a thing where there was all that stuff and then it got pulled at the end. They, so, yeah, we're in this chicken and egg, and we can't run all the numbers until we have the cost to sort of say
Yeah.
this is the maximum
Yeah.
federal grant we could ever hope to get, and then work backwards. So,
Is proven community support a referendum or
yeah, we're referendum.
proven like
Showing like-
community
showing
funding
financial
support?
It was interesting how she worded it.
Correct.
Yeah, well, and when we asked the guys in the province, and we've asked them a couple of times, they want to see community support, and they measure community support by donations. But if we've had a referendum, but the referendum's only, could only be approving the tax neutral borrowing, and that's not a,
But if
So
it's
it's
2.1 million is towards the project, plus if we had our our funding from our
Yeah.
private funders in place, so
Yeah.
we,
I think
right
it's
now we're talking
important.
about 1.5 million. And if we had the 2.1 million, and then we talked about the other day, we'd have 1.2 in reserves, and there's another number.
There's a
that's in
whole
there.
slide
So-
we're gonna go through.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
gonna be-
yeah.
So
Yeah.
potentially,
Yeah.
we would be able to demonstrate that we have the support from the community.
I would think that a key component on building community support and building on what Kathy was saying is going to be how much grant funding we have, because we need to know that, I think, before we go to referendum in order to get the community to support
But
this
they
project.
won't, they're
That's
saying,
a chicken
Pam's
and
telling
egg.
us they won't approve grants without knowing that our share's there.
Or knowing that, you know,
Yeah.
we need to be able to say, this project is eligible for 73%. 73% of this project is eligible to be funded through grants.
Yeah.
But we need to be able to confidently say that, I
That
believe,
we've got
before
the
we go
other
to
20,
referendum.
the other
because- yeah.
27
Yeah.
is clearly, but
But it strengthens the argument for the referendum, I think, because you're saying we can make that case that that 2.1 that we're borrowing to help build the municipal hall is actually leveraged into the entire project. So I think it's a really coherent argument or rationale for the community to understand that you need to say yes to this referendum because it will access all of this other funding.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's.
And so it's a really solid argument for why we are including municipal hall as well.
And what point of readiness should we be? Would it be better to be shovel-ready
Well,
and just ready to pull the trigger on this thing? I think it would. I think it would be
well,
advantageous
then
because
you've
there's gonna
gone
be a
all the
lot
way
of
down to.
projects that won't get the funding and that sort of thing.
I think because of the size of the amount of money, they're gonna look at projects that are gonna be at the stage where it's not gonna be much more to get the shovel in the ground.
Yeah, exactly.
But you don't wanna be so shovel-ready that you've gone and issued your tenders. or
No,
you've got
no,
your
no,
tender
certainly
documents
not.
back. No.
Yeah.
So when we get to we figured if we had to, we had enough information now to do a grant application, because they want to know that your numbers are fairly sure.
Yeah, okay.
So that's,
The other
yeah.
thing we were just talking about too is that you want to be first in line.
Yes.
And so there's all sorts of people who are now scrambling to put a project together because all of a sudden there's billions of dollars ready for grant applications. You want to prove that you actually have a project ahead of all those people, and so the sooner you get in that queue and demonstrate that you're ready to go, the higher up on the list I'm guessing you would be.
With more certainty, cost certainty, so the more shovel-ready you are,
Exactly, you just look better
the
compared to the
better
others.
your chances.
Yeah.
So
That's-
we've
that's
also
what
got
I-
UBCM coming up,
That's where they might make an announcement.
but we should start drafting our
We should be
Wait,
building
wait,
our
there's a
note
application.
and updating, because we did get the beautiful design thing in front of the minister last year, so
Yeah.
it would be a good opportunity to come back with an update on it.
Yeah, we already made
And
a
when
note
is
that
that,
we need to
Melanie?
meet with.
Sorry.
When is that?
I think it's
September.
20th of.
No, it's a week early this year.
I want to say
Mid-September,
15th,
yeah.
mid-September.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And luckily, you'll have your chief financial officer with you, so.
Yeah.
Oh, you're not coming with us?
I'll be in Europe.
But we should have a nice little presentation.
A package ready, absolutely.
like that.
Is there an action associated with that?
And from what I understand too from these applications, I mean, it's dependent upon where it's earmarked, what year you're earmarked for, so they expect, and I didn't read anything in here about multiple year funding, so if they're granting it for that 2021 year, they want to see it spent within those 12
Well, no,
months.
I don't.
That's the way they did the culture.
As long as it's
Yeah.
progressive.
So basically, I mean, so that's why we need to be ready, so.
But these
Yeah.
big grants, they often give you more than
Yeah,
1 year.
but I didn't read about multi-year reading, or multi-year funding,
Yeah,
maybe
but
it'll come out in the
that'll come out
application.
in the,
We just need to be ready.
I mean, if they commit it out of their money, then they just carry it forward.
So there's reasonable urgency of moving everything ahead at a good pace here.
I like
That's what
that,
I'm saying.
reasonable urgency.
That's
Urgency so often.
Well, the other thing Brian Bedford did say to me is they wouldn't issue a call for applications that would be sort of ending just right around an election campaign time, because they don't want to have applications come in and then have local governments change and pull the applications.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there's sort of an unwritten rule that you don't do anything, around elections. So, I mean, they have it provincially, but they apply the same thing to the local government. So, given the small amount of money, I'm guessing that maybe they'd make some announcements around UBCM that, in November, that intake would open or something. Now, Pam also said it was a rolling intake, but they've got to make a decision.
Yeah.
May
I'm
31st
sorry
of,
about it.
May 31st
She was.
of, they've got till September this year to give their plans to the feds as to what they're gonna do. May 31st of 2019 is when the next set of plans. So that sort of waves flags to me as to when they would have had all their review of the applications done and be ready to submit them to the Fed. So, anyhow.
But
So
they
we
have
should
to-
move ahead is what it is.
Yeah,
It's
and
gonna be
the provincial guys, the staff, they really hadn't talked about any of this because they weren't gonna do that until this had been signed.
Yes.
So they were having their first meeting last week.
Reasonable urgency.
All right, is everybody happy with what's coming out of there and
Is there any
as far as
action?
timelines and that sort of thing?
It's just ongoing work at this point.
Yeah.
There's lots of actions. I don't know if it means a little lift of action, but it's
Maybe
UBCM is
just-
probably far enough away that
Okay.
you can
Yes.
prep for it.
Start thinking about it.
Okay.
I think we definitely need to have a next document,
Mhm.
and that
Oh, absolutely.
really got their attention, so
It
I
did.
don't, if maybe you will start to think
I
about
think
that.
this
what we
is
could
part of the
present.
case
The
of
case
war.
for
I think the
support.
case for
Case for
support
Case
might
support
be
is
that.
ready,
Yeah.
and the business case, having the business case done too.
Big one.
And pictures, because what happens is they start to flip through it while you're doing the, so if that's what you're gonna capture, they're not gonna be at that meeting, or, you know.
They'll be numb as well, you know,
Yes.
creating.
So
visuals.
it's
Yeah.
something that kind of breaks up the mundaneness of it. So
Absolutely.
I thought that really worked in getting their
It did.
attention, you know, and the format as well, because it's so large, right? The staff.
It becomes exercise.
Oh, we can make it bigger, yeah.
No, the minister was interested in the pictures. The staff will be more interested in the details, so.
In the numbers,
But the beauty of that, it was, I think we were memorable to them and.
Yes, we
and
had
Gina.
something in writing, and I think the staff guys appeared to be reasonably impressed that we had actually progressed past talking about the
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah, and then it'll be.
All right, so we'll move on to the update, read the fundraising communications subcommittee.
Yes, so we met on Monday and went through some final FAQ revisions in terms of addressing the pool, we're still addressing the pool, and the municipal hall being
So it's
in the
in now.
building. Pardon?
The pool's in now.
The pool's in.
It's only the size of this table.
Let me just tweet
And
that.
yeah, could you
Pool's
put that
in.
out on social media?
Pool's in. Sean is-
And the municipal hall being included. So I think we've come to some better consensus and some positive wording, and so we're putting all that together, and that will circulate through the steering committee one more time before it goes on the website. We're looking at some infographics, formats for the FAQ page, starting to possibly use some of the mascots in terms of infographics and build in the branding. So Sophie and I are working on that, coming up pretty soon here. Public engagement, so we talked a lot about the public events calendar for Bowen that will be ramping up now that we have spring and sunshine. And possibly being able to be a part of some of those events that we know a lot of the island is going to be coming to, rather than hosting a whole bunch of our own events. So if we can start to kind of be a part, connecting with people organizing those events, to have a booth at, or just to take advantage of the people that are already coming.
Do you have some examples of what those
Sure,
would be?
so for instance, there's a Friends of the Library put on a massive book sale on the long weekend in May.
Right.
And it's huge, everybody comes in, it's at the school.
Yeah.
School. It is at the community school, I did confirm that.
And it is gonna be, I confirmed that
Yeah,
yesterday.
and so we just thought it would be great if we had possibly somebody there to sit at a desk with maybe our cards or the FAQs or even the website open, and to answer questions and just give out information, and that would be repeated at other.
So
Canada
Canada
Day.
Day will be another one,
Bowfest.
Bowfest again.
That's such a good idea.
Talked about, well, actually the garden sale, that was maybe something else we didn't talk about, but that's a big
I was
one
gonna
as
suggest
well.
maybe the farmer's market, just
And-
because
Okay.
there was one suggestion I wanted to make,
We had
was maybe starting to use some photos of our current spaces. I was brought into a conversation again about the need for a workout space in the competition. And when I actually took somebody and said, this is what we have, they got the message. They were like, oh, and I said, all we are doing now is relocating these spaces. And I just thought maybe using actual pictures, because a lot of people I don't think know about some of these spaces. And we just sort of, and I thought a picture might sort of show the level of quality or lack of quality.
That's a good idea, just out of the sort of before
And
and
then
after.
with maybe something like the farmer's market, again, you can go and sort of show people, this is what the facility currently looks like.
Yeah, and the farmers markets will be happening every Saturday this summer, or at least for July. They're still working on some funding for that, but so those might be good opportunities as well. There was discussion around being on some of the commuter ferries, so just having somebody set up there to do some engagement that way, because so many people commute off island.
Could I suggest that when you do these things, there should be at least 2 people? I think having an individual
support.
might be a little bit.
And that sort of became part of the, where's all the people gonna come to be these 2 people?
Yeah, right.
And so we were also talking about maybe having the ability, like down at the school, under the undercover area, to, when these events are happening, just put up some posters
Right.
that people would just look at, and then twig to come, you know,
Yeah.
some handout cards to take them to the website and stuff like that, rather than us having to, because I don't think there's, looking at the group around the table.
Right,
What
I
we
get
could do
it.
is sign a
Yeah.
sheet, but if nobody fills it out, then we'll.
Right.
Gotta make it easy, for sure.
I mean, definitely at Canada Day and
Fest.
we need to
Yeah,
Yeah.
ensure
big
that their
presence.
presence is
Yeah.
there.
Right, if there's a booth
But
and
it would
everything.
be,
Sophie is gonna draft a media release to be ready right after the Gate 3 approval. Let's be positive.
Just quickly going back to the public engagement opportunities, though, I think what the subcommittee was looking for from the steering committee is some sort of direction. Like, do we want to go ahead and do these things? Like Jackie was going to prepare a calendar of upcoming events. But in terms of actions, like what do we actually need to do these things? So,
Yeah,
Well, and I think
who's
it's gonna be
go and-
commented,
Right.
is this a supported initiative that we're doing from the steering?
and who would be willing to do this on the steering committee?
I'm quite happy to show up for BOFEST and Canada Day, but I'm not showing up every Saturday at the farmer's market or anything else, so, I mean, I think we've got to look at realistically who's.
Yeah, so would any other steering committee
Yeah,
members
likewise.
be interested?
I think from the design team, I would be prepared to go with the larger events. I don't like to go on the ferry either. But
fair enough.
Every time I ride on the ferry, I will talk about the community center.
We're gonna get.
so you're already doing your job, Sam.
Can you wear a little sandwich bowl?
Ask me about the community center.
Yeah.
We can get those
I'll wear the
stickers
t-shirt
now.
and the sandwich board.
Just some buttons.
Bumblebee outfit.
That's me this year. I'm gonna do the parade.
So it sounds like that for those other events, we would just prepare materials and make sure that the materials are there, a request from the organizers that we could leave some materials and send it up that way.
And anything that's at the school, we can presumably, because you've got the rec center windows there, put posters on those rec center windows. You know, have.
Yeah.
Soon to be replaced.
I think
Soon to be replaced.
the joking aside, what we were discussing is that, you know, the project needs community champions, and it needs to be passively engaging people in the activities that they're doing day to day, as opposed to creating a pedestal saying the project's up here, come to us. We need to be at a grassroots level being engaged, so the project could do with, like, that's the purpose of developing a calendar, is that we can actually assign some resources within the community or within the steering committee to actually be engaged as developing this project on the ground at these events. So the sandwich board, the hats, the shirts, talking about it.
Can't wait for the community center t-shirt.
I think that's where the project needs to
We need a
be
new
driving
mascot.
towards. It can't be creating something in isolation that it expects people to come and respond to, otherwise you get negative comments, and so we need ambassadors and champions
We need everybody
We
wandering
need some,
around wearing
probably need
bumblebee
some
buttons.
buttons, so
Or
we need.
costume.
We have a ton of buttons.
Yeah.
Kathy's just
What do they say?
volunteered to wear the front, they're on the front
As long as it
counter.
doesn't
What do they
need
say?
iron.
They just have the bumblebee
You know, we
logo.
all should be
No,
wearing
they
bumblebee.
don't say anything, I don't
Every
think.
need
council
something a
meeting,
little bit
everybody
more
should be wearing
definitive.
bumblebee costumes.
Like, where's the community center? When's it coming?
All right, Gary,
So-
can you design that for us?
Send a message out there. What would be the start date, the actual kickoff for the fundraising campaign? Have you thought about that?
We need the case for support.
It's
Well, you need case of support.
subject to the MOUs
Yes.
as
That's all
Predecessors.
bits and pieces of it, yeah.
Yep, and it's.
But targeting sort of the end of May, again?
Is this all after gate 3 approval, everything's like?
This go.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the intention.
Okay, so that could be, yeah,
Yeah.
that could be.
So the press release will go out,
Inspiration.
again, it'll be great, opportunity to seize like the moment and create more
Yeah.
excitement and build that momentum.
Okay,
And I think that's part of the mentioned brief that Sophie would be drafting as soon as Gate 3 is
yeah.
approved. We would be sort
Hey,
of announcing
hit
this in media and getting out there and saying, you know, there's a bunch of stuff happening.
Okay.
Get engaged, we're gonna engage you.
And that would be parallel to the private, as going after private prospects or
Yes.
donors.
The soft fundraiser, yeah.
Okay, so is that a direction then from the steering committee that you're empowering the communications subcommittee to just go ahead and do these public engagement events? Like, we don't need to?
After we get the council approval.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the case for support approved.
And we should talk about funding, I guess, too, because it will involve some
Yeah.
funds.
Yeah,
We did put capital line item in for the budget. So with that empowerment, can the communications team spend that money for
How
this
much was it?
campaign, I
How much
guess?
was it?
There was $5,000. And so
Sophie, I think you
the
got it.
case for support
Yeah,
is part of that.
yes, okay. So you need.
But do we need
resolution
something
to
from the
cancel.
steering committee to be able to spend that?
I think, didn't we already have a resolution?
I thought we did.
That was the subcommittee, does it?
Well, no, way back in the beginning, I mean, when we
I
put in
think-
the
I think
application for
There
the
it
money.
is, but it's about how, I think the request is
Yeah.
where it's being applied, because it was specific.
Well, but I thought when we did this, what we want the 5,000 for, we set out what we wanted it for. We didn't necessarily put absolute numbers beside things.
Okay.
So we got, I was taking it that we had approval to spend up to 5,000 on the case for support, setting up some private
Yeah,
meetings with private donors and some brochures and printing.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got the council authorized community center fundraising subcommittee to spend up to $10,000 to proceed with the fundraising strategy to be drawn from the community center.
But that's separate, that's not the same 5,000. That's, the 10,000 was about the fundraising, setting up the cabinet, and potentially having a fundraising cabinet coordinator.
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
This is a different capital line
So
item.
we put another so we put 15 in. So what was the resolution to get the 5 into the budget?
I'm just trying to find it.
Wasn't that part of your budget request?
That's part of my budget
Yeah, so
request,
it's
that's
in the
what I'm
budget.
saying.
So-
Yes.
Yeah, but what was the rationale? Did the rationale come from
It was for
this?
communications,
Oh, well, that's,
Yeah.
for case for support and
yeah,
communications.
well,
Sophie, did you have another point, or you were?
Oh, it's just that, like, I think we've covered it, but just, are we going ahead with these public engagement opportunities? And if so, can we just?
yeah, I would,
Just send the money.
Because the thing that it seems to happen is that the subcommittee, we're like, okay, we'll run this past the steering committee, and then we don't necessarily get a lot of direction, go ahead, do this. And then, so we're kind of like, I feel like it's a bit of a cycle that we go through, so,
Which slows things down?
yeah.
Yeah.
So if we can just go ahead and do these public engagement opportunities, do the planning for them, logistics, you know.
Okay, but what, I guess my concern is.
which ones are they?
Which ones, I mean, I don't think we're gonna get a lot of bodies out except for Bowfest and Canada Day,
Mhm,
or from the committee.
mhm.
I'm not gonna come down every Saturday. Who's gonna go down every
I will
Saturday to
sign
the
up
market?
for 2 events, other than the big ones. So maybe when you see the line of events, and you might think, oh, I'm gonna go anyway, I can do that.
Yeah, so.
So
that's-
why don't we put that calendar together, and then we
Yeah.
can circulate it amongst everyone and see what
put
But I'm happy to
responsibility.
champion one at the school, at one of the farmers market, and I can help with I'll do a theory thing, so if you wanna put that in.
Yeah, I think a good
Yeah,
idea is
Melanie, yeah.
produce a calendar, and then people can sign up on it, and if you don't have anybody signing up on it, then you won't be there that day. So it's gonna be, but I think obviously BowFest and Canada Day are the big number ones. How many people come to the farmers markets? Is there like hundreds or?
I've never seen more than half a dozen people there when I've gone there.
But I think they're different. What I like about the mix is like at BowFest, you just get a lot of people grazing, right?
Sure.
They're just gonna come by and they're just gonna pick up the little thing and they're gonna ask a question or two. At some of these other events, you might get a little bit more in-depth conversation.
It's
So I
general
think
for
you
us.
need a bit of a mix.
Kathy?
If we can just go back to Sophie's point for a second about empowering the communications
Yes.
subcommittee, because you guys are the experts on this, right? And I would certainly move a resolution that the communication team or group give
Do
them
what they
some
have to do.
discretion
Yeah,
to do what they need to do.
I'll second that.
Okay. That's not a very good recommendation. Do what you need to do.
They're not directing a subcommittee, they're supporting,
No, we're
endorsing,
Empowering, I like that.
Nice.
empower,
that
that the
well,
steering committee
Don't get too
empower
carried
the
away, though.
communication subcommittee to
Go
proceed
for it.
with,
No means
You
it's-
don't need empower, you just say that
We
they-
endorse the plan to
The
move
co-
ahead with
yeah.
communications.
They have the
So you
authority
communication
to.
plan,
the
yeah.
communication subcommittee has the authority to
Yeah.
proceed
With
with
the
public.
strategy.
Yeah.
Their
so the verb is has.
the authority to
That's really disappointing.
You don't like that verb?
It's really better
Just doesn't
verb.
look good.
Well, all we want to know is we can go ahead and plan these things.
Yeah. Without having to come back to the
Without having to
steering
come
committee.
back.
Communications
Yeah.
subcommittee is authorized to proceed with delivering the communications plan.
Mhm.
So I guess I have a question too then, just in terms of approving materials.
Mhm.
Is an approval, do we just, so if we get 10 infographics, for example, can we email those to the steering committee with a date of deadline for comment?
Yeah.
And then can we assume at that point we can use them if we
There's
don't
no
get
comment,
any negative
then-
feedback back?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or do we need to bring everything to the meetings for approval? Okay, all right.
As a manager, and both of you have spending authority as well to sign off on things, so.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so
the only
we'll-
reason to, I mean, I just feel from my perspective, we need to just send everything to the steering committee because we don't want to send something out and find out that somebody's violently opposed to it. when
No, I
they're-
agree, we
No, no,
would
I-
definitely
Yeah,
send
but
things
having a
around
formal
the steering
resolution.
committee, so,
Or is unaware, which
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
more of a
I'm
concern.
unaware,
yeah.
yeah.
Just difficult to get everyone together.
Everybody just.
Having a deadline for comments is really helpful too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If we don't hear from
Then
you
it's
within a
clear.
week, we're proceeding.
Yes, exactly,
3 days.
okay.
That the communications subcommittee is authorized to proceed with the communications plan as presented at the April 25th, 2018 meeting.
Sure.
I did add what Shauna just said, if you want to add that on.
Well, we might change our minds and do something different, so don't say as presented.
I would just say as
Proceed with the
with-
development and implementation of the
Yeah.
communications plan.
strategy, yeah.
Implementation of what?
Development and implementation of the
Communication strategy.
communication strategy.
Okay.
Awesome. I move it.
Don't say that, say that.
Second? Kathy will second. All in favor? Good, thank you very much. Approved. Go to town.
Get anybody a glass of water.
Okay, so I think that's about it. Under new business now.
Are we doing 5:45?
We moved it.
We'll take a
Bring some
2 minutes,
water
2 minute
after
break,
we're
yeah.
ready to, okay.
2 minutes.
Oh, we did.
Yeah.
That's fine.
That's fine. We don't have anything to say. Well, we're going it back out to, we're gonna send it back out.
Well,
Well, we're going
you
to.
just want to do an update?
Revise the.
Oh, it was yesterday.
Sorry, scope of work. I mean, I thought we were going to look at, we should talk about what we're doing. Yeah, we're revising it, recall,
Yeah,
and broadening the approach.
Right.
We've been limited.
On the island.
yeah, to kind of local.
Get somebody else or a cheerleader.
No, a treat or, I don't know what the circumstances.
Okay.
It's out with brother, this brother.
If you
Megan. Just so devastating. And his brother.
Can you please? I just don't want to be on camera. Come on.
Yeah.
Move around all day.
Winding away, it's too bad. Such a, I don't know what if you think about it, you know. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I don't know.
Thank you.
Absolutely. They have the two best paid waiters.
Yeah. They do, indeed. Right to the top, we would expect none less. Nothing less.
Craig and I could help.
Yeah, it's all right. I was never a waitress, so I was.
Yeah, it
Raj is
looks like you work in a German beer hall.
Ladies, my Drindle. Skirt. Don't ask me to yodel.
Here's one, and I guess we can grab that.
Thanks, Raj.
So, I've gone through all of this yet, but is there really an intention to have the effective stage area and the marginal improvements room?
Thanks, Yeah, that's it. Yeah, oh, lovely. Great, thanks, Greg.
I've got another.
Right now, planning ahead. Oh, yeah, right, she was planning ahead.
She won't be able, she can't do it at.
Okay.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
No, it's good.
And she's gotta supervise summer staff and we're having some other issues there, so.
Thanks for the answer, Rick.
Yeah.
Speed?
Thank you. No, I just want a glass of water.
Glass of water.
There's my coffee.
Oh, okay. So we have one here, so. You go ahead. You have lots there, Sam?
Oh, yeah.
I'm good. You go. Okay.
Yeah, I don't know. You wish maybe you want to trade places or is that kind of warm?
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, why don't you trade? No, thank you, Alice.
Where's the standard?
There's just a couple little issues. I mean, I
Yeah.
It's handy.
You were cold?
I know, I don't know what's wrong.
What's happening?
I'm getting a bone.
I just made that comment with
First
reference
time
when
I've
it
been-
was cold. She opened the window one day and I was
Yeah.
freezing in the room. Marie made her close it.
Well, that's when I was like moving tables around and chairs, like lifting pizzas. Casey, that top thing. Did we get through it?
Is that me the other day?
Yeah.
We didn't get through it.
Yes.
Oh, no.
Well, we did talk about the finance stuff, and we already talked about that.
There's just work that's incomplete, so we're able to finalize some of the conversations associated with it. And it's looking like
Oh my God. Of course, all their joints are
we're gonna
gonna
be
be joints
down to the wire in terms of timing on cost estimates.
Just lubricating the timing.
Right.
Barely. But only 9
Take
minutes.
note of that.
Yeah, he's the high levels.
That's right.
He's a funny guy, that one.
Yeah, it is.
Is there more on that that you want to bring up?
Nope, no, I'm good.
While we're waiting here, I'll show you guys all a great photograph that was taken Saturday night at Kate Hill's Chapel.
Oh, wow! Look at
Now, I
that.
have to say, I was actually performing that evening, but I can't actually say that the Herbie came for me. It was a choir concert, but Sherry Aldrich was also performing.
Oh,
And so
Oh,
we
that's
had, in that space, so their capacity is 160. We sold 150 tickets before the concert opened. There was another 40 people standing in the foyer who could not sit. That was mostly the choir. This is when Sherry was performing. And yeah, it was an amazing concert, but really we could have filled that. We had to turn away people.
So could we have put all those people into our new performance
We
center?
could have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it was
Same, yeah.
fabulous. And that's a choir concert.
Yeah.
So they say
Oh, that's
Sherry
wonderful.
Ulrich was performing as well.
Sherry's always a big attraction.
So definitely a big draw, yeah. But also when you get a choir that's 60 people,
Yeah,
everybody brings a friend.
yeah.
So right away, you've got a crowd.
Yeah, that's
And,
true.
yeah, so anyway, it was just a fabulous evening. Choir concert was held on Saturday night at Cape Hill. I say we had about at least 170 people. 60 people. Like,
All right, so we're gonna head along with the new amended 6.1, which is an update on this,
Did you get through 5.5?
the Bowen, sorry, which one?
5.5?
No, we didn't do 5.5.
Oh, I thought I am so sorry, thank you, Sam. Okay.
Reasonable urgency.
Reasonable, fundraising cabinet coordinator selection. Just a quick overview, I guess.
Why don't
before
we call it
move.
fundraising cabinet coordinator update?
Update.
Okay, update.
So the update there is that we did put out an RFP locally with the hopes that we would have somebody local who was interested. We ended up with 2 proposals that
Off-island?
off-island proposals from one from quite a large firm. One from a large firm and one from an individual who is a professional. But I think what we talked about on Monday is that we were going to put the revise it a little bit and be a bit more specific.
Okay.
We have to change the scope of work and clarify
Yeah.
in order for it to hit its project objectives.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. That was
Well
much more
done.
succinct.
Yeah.
And possibly look at some approaches as to who we might, how we might market that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. And when are those, sorry, when is the new RFP going on?
When will it go out? It's Wednesday, right?
Next
Probably
week.
not until the end of next week.
Next week, yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Or-
How was the response? So that was it, they just did it?
Gary, we're not in a closed meeting.
No, pretty general.
Say number of responses, yeah.
Never responded. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to 6.1, which is an update on the Owen Children's Center. I met with Ann Silverman. She, of course, was going back to the community campus idea where they had their after-school club as a individual building up there, which they're still totally prepared to do. She would obviously like to put it somewhere between the school and the community center, which of course comes back to the fact that we need some extra land around there for, you know, expansion and that sort of thing. I personally, and I just thought I'd throw it out here, she's prepared to talk to SD 45, the school district. They were interested the last time. I just looked at a map and I thought our land was a little bit closer to the school, but it's not. They own quite a bit of chunk of property on this end of the school towards the community center. So I think that's where she would like to be. I just wanted to run it by the steering committee here and just see. I think it's a great fit, personally, in a community campus perspective. As, you know, part of the community center and the whole thing. I don't know, what does everybody think?
What's
Is
your
she,
question?
is she asking for a dedicated building?
They would build the building and, you know, it had nothing to do with us. And
No, but it would just be for after-school care? Like, what would
it's-
happen in that
It's gonna
building in
be
the morning?
breakfast club and after school, so it would be available to SD 45 for during the day.
Is this gonna take place of their youth center program? At the kid-
No.
children's center?
No,
Something different.
it's a totally different program, it's just an extension, just an
It's a,
expansion
yeah,
of the
it's,
program.
the youth center is
Yeah.
the municipalities.
Right.
Program, but this is after-school care. It's,
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
yeah.
So if it's not
That's
in our
what we're
land
talking
and
about.
it's not in our building,
Well, conceivably, it could be in our
Play care,
land,
play care, yeah.
Hey, Gary, you know, the schools, a couple of years ago, the province came out, and I know a lot of the other schools, kids of my granddad, there's after-school care provided at the school. They use the school space after school to provide the after-school
Yeah.
care.
Well, I think
And the
I think the
preschool
school
here.
needs a room now.
No, but
So I brought
before
this
and
up.
after school.
But I brought this up when we had that meeting with the school district,
Yeah.
and they didn't express a lot of interest in putting any more money. There's no more provincial money coming down.
No, but why can't Ann use the community use room after school?
They do now.
That's what they use now, but
it is.
it's not big enough.
And
It's not
they
big
can't use the multipurpose room?
The multipurpose room is a classroom now.
And they
My son's
exceeded.
So I said I'd just throw it out at this meeting and see what the reaction was here.
I just wanted to finish up, I did ask that this be added to our comprehensive planning for Lot 2.
Yes,
So
Yeah.
that was, because
and
it needs to be part of that discussion.
yeah,
And I think that's my segue is that should be part of that, what we talked about a couple meetings ago about master planning of all the needs of spaces in the community, whether they're on your property or not, their community use sort of master planning initiatives needs to be undertaken to find the highest and best use of land and space.
But
Yeah.
this is one really to explore, I think, because there is funding coming through.
correct.
Like if BCC could, they're the ones who can leverage the funding, nobody else can, the school district can't, but it's an organization like BCC that can leverage the most amount of money, so I think working with them, as a partner.
I'm just not sure I'm just not sure what what Ann is asking of us, so I'm wondering if it'd be worthwhile just to invite her to a future meeting.
So let's see what's,
Yeah.
initially on the community campus
Yeah.
project, there was a piece of land allotted to her, which was between the road and the community center.
Challenge that.
Well, it wasn't allotted to her.
It was
It was
indicated.
part of a concept, and she's just saying, I still want to be part of that concept.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you can't be part of that concept there because it's not gonna happen. But I said, conceivably, it might be able to happen somewhere else around here. And she's very interested in that. And she said, well, should I go back and revisit the conversation with School District 45? And I said, well, you're welcome to it, but I said, let me just talk and see how people, I just think it's a great fit. I think it'll go well with the public. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that I think would work for her first degree.
I just want to support what Sam and Melanie were saying in terms of master planning for that.
Yes.
I'm also kind of concerned that there are a couple of different tracks that are ongoing here around Lot 2, and that there are, so there's a kind of an informal, impromptu, as I see it right now, planning process that's underway that's getting its own steam up around the project, around that property. And I think it's important for this committee to make a statement about that, just even if it's a general parcel, a general piece of Lot 2, and saying, this is all going to be community use. It's not housing, it's not whatever, it's community use projects and future expansion for what is our mandate.
Agreed.
So I think it's really important that message gets into that other stream, so that because it seems that stream is being it's being initiated by a public input process, which feels to me a little bit backwards, but and this sort of is all of an aside, except that it's quite important to this project. If suddenly this becomes a little isolated island that's surrounded by some other completely disparate use, So I think it's, so anyway.
I want to completely
I agree.
support what you're
Yeah,
saying,
me
Drew,
too.
and say, maybe one of the things that this steering committee needs to actually put their pen to paper and action something that says.
What do we need? What do we want?
A needs assessment and master planning of the properties associated with the community center lands and et cetera needs to initiate a master planning exercise that has public engagement and a thoughtful undertaking of all those.
Yeah,
So
currently-
you're
currently
thinking of
people
a
are-
separate community campus
It-
one, not the
It could be
entire
both.
lot
It's-
too.
I'm just thinking, community campus is a word for development, that's great, those lands
It's only
need development
partial.
management, which starts with a needs assessment and master planning, and that's what needs to be kicked off. Otherwise, you're gonna have these
Yeah, I
disparate
think that-
communications, and you're not gonna have a coordinated strategy.
The danger is that everybody's pointing to Lot 2 as a solution for the pool, the gym, the childcare, the bike park, skate park, climbing wall, overflow parking,
Housing.
Potential future library, housing, and everybody thinks that, that's no problem, it'll be accommodated in Lot 2, but nobody's actually put together like, what would that look like?
Right.
Maybe it's fantastic, or maybe like only 2 of those things fit there.
Or that's a 20-story building.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you go back in history to the rezoning that was done on Lot 2, the area that we're using for the community center, the rezoning clearly contemplated 2 buildings. One being a community center that was a bit more square footage than we've got in the one now, if I'm remembering correctly. And also another building that was more of a multi-use purpose, maybe some residential, childcare facilities and everything else. So it contemplated in the area that we're dealing with, having more square footage than we've got in the community center right now.
So what we can tell you now, having designed that building, is that we can't put anything more on that parcel.
Yeah,
And that there's
but I guess
and that
that-
there's inadequate parking on that parcel for that building.
So I guess that's the question I'm raising is members of the community that have elephant memories, which a lot of the community does. They will be remembering, as Ann is, that there was a contemplation when we did the rezoning in 2014, that there would be a community center on the site and a building that could accommodate a childcare facility in the same square area that we're using.
That was a conversation between one council member and one staff person. It was never brought to the council to hold that for
It showed up on the map.
Yeah, it showed up
No,
on the
but-
map
okay,
and all
okay,
the
okay,
public
okay.
consultation.
I just want to go back to what Drew said, because I think it's really important.
Yeah.
This subcommittee of the APC and Mayor Standing
Master,
Committee is meeting again this afternoon for this session in June, and there is a lot of momentum there. And
To
I
have
do-
a charrette before this, yeah.
Yeah, and I do think, it's really important that we clearly lay out the parameters from this group as, I hate to say this, pissing in our corner as to what the area is that is off limits for,
Yeah, I'm just talking
Yeah.
about what
No, I
we
know, I
did
get what
when
you're
we did the
saying.
lot
I just
2
didn't wanna
rezoning,
lose-
and so
yeah.
we need to address that.
To move this forward, do we need to send in maybe a resolution?
I think a resolution would be good, just saying, and I'll be attending part of that meeting this afternoon, and if we have a resolution that I can say, here's our sandbox right here.
And we
that-
need more.
Or just, this
Or
is the
set the
area
boundaries.
that's used for,
Community
Yeah.
facilities
Yeah.
that are related to the community
Yes.
center in the school.
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I would love to nail that down.
Yeah.
Really love to nail it down.
Or just
But
a-
if this is a school up here, and this is the playing field in here, and this is not the scale by any stretch of the imagination. This is all SB 45, about somewhere in here, right? And of course, we have everything else around, somewhere around like that, way down here. I would like to see this area, no, just around here, so that we have this really nice transition between the community center and the school. We put the bike park in here and the pool over here. But this is the land. But I don't, we have to define what the requirement which would be, which I don't think we can do right now.
I would say easily we would need to double the parcel size that we have now, if
Yeah.
not more, immediately north and adjacent to our current parcel.
which is here.
Correct.
Yeah, so I was originally thinking to the end of the playing field, but I think we need like more over here. This stuff here doesn't matter, we're gonna get that anyway, I think.
Well, the
But it's
topography-
not really
topography is
usable.
not helpful, right.
So that's nice, eh?
Well, no, that's good.
Yeah. Just take a picture of them, put it on the thing.
I'll show it to the side.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, here's a good one. But that's sort of a concept, so I don't know, do we want to, as a steering committee?
I have something.
Yes.
Does the planning process for the rest of the municipal lands include a formal representation from the school or from the
No.
steering committee?
Steering committee, perhaps not the school.
No.
as far as-
Well,
Is it
Gary's
something?
on.
Were you
No,
on that?
no, this is a subcommittee of the APC and the Mayor Standing Committee. I just started inviting myself to a couple of their meetings.
Good
But
plan.
I think they just need to be reminded. That's what I think at this stage. We don't have to give them a defined concept. And what they're doing is on June 8th and
June
9th. June 9th. It's a 2-day weekend thing. It's inviting the public to get input onto the community lands. But I think, I really heard what you said. We need to lay those parameters out for them saying,
Right,
don't include this in your
Exactly.
charrette.
exactly, yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's not up for
I
negotiation.
think that's right,
Yeah.
exactly.
Would it also be appropriate to reference the parks plan and the rec plan in terms of what the community engagement from that had
absolutely.
identified as needs in terms of skate parks and like what those needs specific came out?
I don't-
Whether we're not saying
Yeah.
specifically, but to reference that there has
We're
been.
getting asked
that
for
work has
skate
been
park
done.
space up there somewhere, because it's
Yeah.
near the school.
And the
This is
sport-
fun.
and the sport.
I don't have a problem with that. I think it's an awesome idea if they can come up with some money. Steph, you had something you wanted to say?
I've just got a recommendation ready, if you want
Okay.
to talk about it.
Yeah, let's see what you got.
That the steering committee recommend that the APC Mayor Standing Committee Subcommittee designate a parcel of lot 2 adjacent to the community center site to accommodate future community use specifically.
No, because we're not asking them to designate a piece. I
Okay.
don't want to give them that sort of authority.
Back to verbs.
Consider in the planning for
Yeah,
lots of.
Consider.
Remember, we don't want to use remember, but something along that lines.
Be
Include,
mindful of.
keep in
Be
mind,
mindful.
include in planning.
How about
Give consideration
exclude a parcel?
Yeah, yeah.
We don't
Include
really
in
want, we
planning.
don't want them to
Parcel
consider
fund.
that, we want
The
them to.
designated part.
Include in planning is probably the best
Include
because it's
exclusion.
actually directing them to include these community things in the planning. And so it's not just considering it, where like, we considered it and threw it out.
It's a
It's
directive.
like,
It's a
It's
directive
included.
of this
Including
committee to
planning
say.
allows then for then all the other issues that need to be incorporated, like access and.
But they still have to have an idea of the amount of space that's required somehow.
No, I don't
Well, I think
think.
that will be
Okay, well,
defined through the
Kathy,
planning
if
process.
you're gonna be there, you.
I'm only
Like-
only there for half an hour of it today.
typically, this initial level of planning can identify almost like a policy of what is up for grabs or what should be included. And then as you go through the process, you can define how much space it needs or how big it would be. But just identifying the needs at this point so that they don't get dropped, like, I don't know, I got a list of a lot of things that I've heard are gonna be solved by that parcel.
And these are already identified
Sorry,
needs
before I
in the
forget this
community.
thought, I mean, maybe it's something along the lines that reminding the subcommittee that a significant portion of Lot 2 has been designated for community center and its uses or something.
And related.
And
Has it
related.
Future?
Has it though, or has it been designated for housing?
Well, no, there's,
It's
there's,
divided up into 4 different uses, I believe.
You used
Steph, you don't have a map there.
terminology earlier. I don't think we need a map at this stage. We just have to remind them that a large piece is being designated for,
Housing.
I would just say for the community center and its uses, or something. like that.
Related.
Related uses.
Related
Yeah.
community uses.
Yeah.
Community uses.
And, you know, I'm happy to separately communicate that to the APC members who are on that committee.
Yeah.
Well, that's
I can
good.
take the resolution this afternoon to them. I just want to give them those parameters, to just remind them, because they're very passionate about this charrette,
Yes,
but I think they've lost sight of what has already been committed to.
understood.
Sorry, you guys, you're watching.
No, I agree with you, Kathy, that's, and I've been pushing for this for a long time. I don't know I don't know where the charrette's gonna go and all that business, and I don't know when they're gonna start defining things, but why not throw it out there right away so that they don't start
Well,
involving
it just gives them their parameters.
I think opening it up beyond what's been considered to date is really what you want to do. Because to date, the idea is that it'll be used for the community, and some of it will be designated for housing. But it's only since then that a lot of these really specific items have come up, like, you know, the pool, the gym, the overflow parking, the climbing wall, skate park, things like that. And so
And the
they're
data,
actually new bits of information as opposed to reminding them of what's been committed in the past.
and
you
the
know
day
what I
will
mean?
come when the community can afford these things.
That's the one I'm
Yeah.
saying.
Right?
Well, that's the one. Unfortunately, this is all I've got right now. But obviously, this is the end of the playing field. I thought we needed at least this. I'd like to go right there.
Probably right to the
Right
corner.
to the end here.
It's past to the
Right to
three?
the corner, right to the corner.
I think that might
Across
be,
it down to Seniors.
okay.
So what I understand about this, they're not calling it a charrette, but what I'm understanding, because I've only attended one meeting, is they're not going in with any preconceived notions of the uses of the land. They want to hear from the public as to what they see the uses. And this is what you said resonated is, that's wonderful, and I think it's a great idea, including all these other uses we've talked about. But we just have to make sure that the portion already designated, we don't want to give false hope to some groups that there's this
Absolutely.
huge piece of
Yeah.
land that's.
And there are other parcels that the municipality owns as well. I think it's really important that we keep a focus here on this particular area, community use.
Yes,
Put the housing elsewhere,
yes,
Yeah.
even elsewhere on this parcel.
yes.
But that
Or
part,
even if we just came out to the three, I know what you're saying, but even if we just came out to there, though, that would be access from here. And that's quite a bit of space, it would help, of course. But I just want to be fairly realistic, so it just doesn't get thrown out. That's the other
The Recreation
But I-
Commission has also put forward a recommendation to council.
But did you see the?
About the
to-
land?
About planning for lot 2.
Did you see?
That
Oh, yeah.
came, it was on an agenda and then
Yeah,
Right.
that's what
I need to flag it for Daniel.
You've just
Okay,
allocated
did it go to
overflow
council?
parking in other buildings.
Mhm.
So that's why.
it
it's
got
actually,
pulled and then someone said to flag it for Daniel.
you know,
I have to
say
look
there's
back at my notes, but.
Was the
Oh, maybe
recognition
another
gonna
way to
go
strengthen
to
this
that
is to make sure that we've got representatives at the charrette.
They should go
From
to
Yeah.
this committee, you know, to.
Well, I'm assuming the charrette, they said how they were gonna design there was going to be,
From the rec commission.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I totally agree with that.
I think there was gonna be an invitation list and then an open call.
So I
Can we have some kind of resolution then, and just, so that gets to that committee?
Shauna, you're referring to a resolution that came forward from the Mayor's Standing Committee.
From the
Which-
Recreation Commission.
Oh,
I got a whereas now.
anything to do with that?
Well, I'm trying to
refer
figure-
to Daniel.
So,
Yeah, that's
whereas a
what's
significant
a lot.
portion of lot 2 has been considered for solving the needs of community, I was gonna say recreation, but I know that flags rec.
Yeah, don't go right.
Okay.
Community use.
Pardon?
Community use.
Just community, okay, solving the needs of community use.
Fac-
Therefore,
facilities.
the community center committee recommend that the subcommittee include a parcel of lot 2 adjacent to the community site to accommodate future. Okay.
Okay, hold on a second.
And we're not recommending that they include
Okay.
anything. We
I
just
don't know
want
that reminding is.
Just,
we want to flag for them. We want, because it is reminding them that this
It
piece
is.
has already been
The
discussed.
resolution reminds them.
included.
It is the include in planning, because planning doesn't mean you're done, it just means it has to be part of the discussion.
It
Plan around.
can't be just
Done in
disregarded
isolation.
as we considered it and it's done. It needs to be part of planning.
That the steering committee suggests that the.
No, we don't, sorry, didn't hear you say
Set
that.
me up.
We're not asking anything of them. We just want to remind them. And I keep going back to remind
Okay, I'll say
them.
remind.
Maybe use your thesaurus to come up with a different way to
Okay.
remind.
What did you say?
That the steering, okay, whereas a significant part of lot 2 has been considered for solving the needs of community uses. The steering committee reminds the subcommittee to include a
No,
parcel.
that a piece of lot 2 has been designated for use of the community center and attended
Future
uses.
community use.
What about instead of remind, note?
Yeah.
Note.
No.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's good.
that's good.
a note to the,
Has it though?
Where are you on that?
That's what we're doing.
No.
Yes.
Well,
The
yeah,
community, so the steering committee notes,
Notes.
notes to the
yeah,
subcommittee, notes to the subcommittee. That a piece of lot 2 has been designated for the community center and adjunctive uses,
I said attendant, but I'm not sure.
attendant uses, associated uses, attendant. I think we're done.
Where's it been designated in the past? Has it been designated?
An area of lot 2 for the community center?
Yeah, I thought we did that
Well, it
way
is, but
back
that's,
when we.
it's already defined there. We
Because
wanted-
we.
We wanted.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm not disputing, I'm
Yeah,
just.
no,
we
no,
wanted
I'm just trying to think,
to
that was
extend it.
crushing to like.
Because I thought the land that
Oh, she
we,
does have that.
the project bit
Yeah.
that we're working on was
It's pretty similar.
designated, I didn't know if additional, and that's why we had such a confined.
Well, that's why the
sandbox.
resolution is vague, right? It's just, we're not saying, and that's why I don't want to get specific about the specific defined area of how it's being allocated. I think it's just important to note and remind them
That
to remember to consider this during the charrette. The other thing, so we have that recommendation. Another one would be, they're developing a guest list, stakeholder list for the charrette. And I think a resolution from this committee suggesting that members of the Recreation Commission and the Parks and Trails Committee be invited due to the master plans that have been undertaken.
Okay.
would it just be a recommendation for the stakeholder list to be vetted by the steering committee of this to ensure that,
Yeah, it's good. Yeah.
And so that's gonna be, I need a request or a recommend?
I'd like to somehow formally remind them as well that there have been master plans that have been completed, because that's information that they can use during their charrette as well. I mean, I can tell them that, but.
One suggested synonym is admonish, but I don't.
Stress.
prompt.
With.
You can
Find another
prompt
way to
someone.
use it. Did it already.
Anyway, one thing I do understand from around the table here, that we do need room for expansion. And that has to be part of the planning process and lot 2. And whether it's there for the charrette or not, I don't.
It won't be, because council hasn't approved any additional lands. Like I said, I think it's just a flag for them.
Yeah.
Do you also need to flag that this, from this committee though, we don't want to see a through road there as well, that's what this meeting.
Yeah, I think that's important. It's an important
Or
requirement.
we don't want to have to pay for it.
But remember,
We don't want a through road,
the
period.
purpose of this 2-day session is to get feedback from the community. And we don't want to set too many parameters saying, I think just reminding them, because we don't want to disappoint people who come and have all these ideas for lot 2 that don't include the community center.
No.
Do you think the point of the charrette is just to define those uses, it's not actually to come out with a plan? So
No, yeah.
things
correct.
like a through road really that's too detailed.
I think
and that's
it's
not
too
the purpose
technical
of the
and
fund,
detailed,
right?
yeah.
Okay, I was just trying to think of
And the one meeting I attended of theirs, that's I think where they came to. Originally, they were looking at getting technical input from members of the community, and then realized that's unfair to ask community members that, and just get general input into the uses of.
So is
To
it,
help define the problem as opposed to solve it.
so is it more that we want to remind remind them that the scope of the planning exercise should be to the remaining balance of the community
That's a nice
of
way of
lot
putting it,
2?
yeah.
Or I often use little words like, we trust that the scope of this exercise will be limited to the remaining part of lot 2, not including the community center site.
Yeah.
So you're basically saying, hands off what you've already given us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're not gonna go after that anyway.
No, yeah, I think the important thing is the.
We need expansion room.
No, but this, we don't want, as Kathy said, a whole bunch of members of the community saying we don't want the community center there.
Yeah, we don't want to open up
So
that
we don't want them to even put the community center land.
I don't think that's on the table.
I did.
No, I don't know. I mean, if this, make it, we trust that the session will only be dealing with the balance of lot 2.
Yes. Yes.
Not.
Not
Thank you for
including.
articulating
Yeah.
that.
Actually, gets
Yeah.
you thinking though.
Whoa.
No, I mean, it's just, you just have to set that constraint for the
Exactly.
public when they come in the door.
That's exactly, thank you for articulating what I was trying to say. So, I don't know if Steph has a resolution.
I didn't really catch yours. Okay, I've got,
Well, we're expecting they're gonna behave a certain way. You say, we trust that you will be doing X. Oh, you know,
so at the end, don't tear down the community center.
No, we trust the discussions for the community, but we'll only focus on the remainder of lot 2.
Okay.
Well, part of the remainder of lot 2 is also what we need for expansion.
No, and then we can have a separate resolution to say,
We
we
need to
would-
double our
we
lot
would
size.
hope you will consider the following potential uses for lot 2: expansion of community center, potential place for
I just think that's
skateboarding
premature.
courts.
I just think, as long as it's known that that land has been allocated, I don't think we want to go into this session on June 8th and 9th, whatever the dates are, giving more parameters, because we're just getting feedback from the community.
Okay.
Yeah, we don't want to get too technical about our wants and needs, especially if they haven't been,
So you don't even want to talk about any kind of land, expansion land for the community?
Center.
Well, call it the community campus. I mean, the community center is what we've got there. The community campus is an extension of that as the community campus project as depicted. You know, perhaps with the daycare center and the.
But that'll all
Well,
come up in
The event
discussion.
itself is about gathering that input.
yeah. And the other thing is that this committee, we haven't got approval from council yet for the expanded use of lot 2. So to lay these parameters on another subcommittee without having the authority behind that is premature.
Yeah. Yeah, if we actually define it and say, stay away from here, but if we just say, hey, you know what, consider that.
But it's not, and they also don't have the authority to do that consideration. It's only council.
Okay, where are we at? Let's just go with that one resolution, and it just
The
needs to
top
let the
one,
rest
the
flow.
where's.
Drew, you're gonna be there anyway.
I'm not at the
The
meeting
trust
You're not at
one.
the meeting. Okay, well.
He
then
decided not
Spencer-
to sit on the
Yeah.
subcommittee.
for some reason.
The no.
Sorry, Steph.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, no, oh, okay.
Whereas a significant part of lot 2 has been considered for solving the needs related to community uses. Therefore, be resolved that the steering committee notes to the subcommittee that a piece of lot 2 has been designated for a community center and attendant uses.
Yeah,
What was the first,
Related
the
future
whereas?
uses?
It's an internal note from a committee to a committee, so.
But at the whereas, do we even need it? What would the
Whereas a
whereas?
significant part of lot 2 has been considered for solving the needs related to community uses.
No, it is being considered.
I just take the whereas. I like the whereas.
I'd just be
but I
quite
think
happy
we
to
do
take the
that.
whereas.
Yeah.
Okay, that the communities, the steering committee notes to the subcommittee that a piece of lot 2 has been designated.
How about allocated?
Allocated.
Okay. For the community center and attendant uses. Oh, it's way better, so simple. So to the point.
You better say what the subcommittee is.
It's there.
We're not sure what the subcommittee is called.
okay, I'm gonna move that.
The advisory planning commission
Second.
slash mayor standing committee
All in
lands.
favor? All in favor?
I was very
Good.
clear when I asked
Thank
who
you.
the subcommittee was, that it's a subcommittee of the mayor's standing committee with members from the APC
Yes.
on it. I asked for that
And I
clarification.
think we even have a recommendation to that effect, or a resolution.
Yikes. Okay, so now the bridge 6.2, which is the move to the closed meeting, and the recommendation is as written in here. Somebody move that, please. Thank you, Kath. Second. Raj, there you go. All in favor? Thank you. Okay, closed meeting.
Hold on.
Just stop for a breath.
Shiny,
Yeah.
absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
You turn the camera off too.
Yeah, we're just doing one from here. Thanks, Sophie.
Bless you.